this is our annual meeting this year, so there's two parts to the meeting. There's the regular meeting, which I'm going to convene, and then after adjourning this meeting, which will be shorter than usual, thankfully, we will have an election, a one-item annual meeting component. They'll be run by ex-president, president for life, because once you're a president, you're always a president, Jim Cellini. And Jim will, I'm not able to run that because I'm on the ticket, so I will step back and watch. And then you guys will get introduced to the candidates who are running for election or re-election, and we'll take it from there. Today I have a couple of updates to the agenda to report to you in addition to my normal president's report. One of them is that the zoning licensing ZLC application voting item is not going to be voted on. It's because this item has already been approved by the Zoning Board of Appeals. And I'm going to come back to that later on. That's not really the way the process is supposed to work. We're supposed to have the neighborhood groups vote. Then the Office of Neighborhood Services consolidates all the input and then writes a letter, and the Zoning Board of Appeals makes a decision. Somehow the process moved sideways. Everyone knows I'm very calm and it takes a lot to rile through. However, that's the second time this month that happened. We also were unable to vote. You guys were unable to vote on the Pache parking lot situation. The Pache, as you know, the Pache former location is, there's a proposal to demolish the building, extend the parking lot. That's certainly something that I think we should have voted on. Somehow that got fast-tracked. NUNIC had a vote, they had an abutters meeting, and they had a ZBA in the space of 24 hours. All three of those things, which is a mammoth shortcut. So I have a formal protest into the Office of Neighborhood Services. I'm probably going to have to sit down with Jerome Smith and tell him that his Chief of Staff, Dan Manning, is pushing things a bit too fast, because it's great for us to expedite construction and all that. I know the mayor wants to do that, but I don't think anyone intended that the consequences that we're bypassing the votes of bodies like us, the residents who come out to meetings and want to have their voices heard on issues, and at least want to have a discussion prior to a vote to make sure that their voices can get heard. This is twice in 1 month. It's not acceptable. I've let Jerome know that by email, and hopefully we'll sit down and resolve the situation so it doesn't happen again. But we've got 20 minutes back, so we'll have more time for cookies and sodas, which we're going to have right after the election. The other things that I wanted to say in the President's report, and I'll be pretty brief, we have a number of things that we've talked about regarding the Boston Redevelopment Authority and the urban renewal zones. It links into a lot of the projects that I know people are probably a little meeting overdose, considering all the projects that folks are going to and the hearings and IAGs and all sorts of stuff like that. A lot of that is the normal Boston Redevelopment Authority process. And I just want to make sure everyone realizes that the urban renewal zones are up for, they're going to expire, all 14 of the ones that do expire, that are not automatic renewal zones like the West End has. The non-automatic renewal zones all expire in April of next year, and we'll take a vote of the City Council and an executive branch of the Commonwealth vote in order to renew any or all of those. Last meeting, or maybe it was the meeting before, we had a vote on a letter with our fellow neighborhood associations, members of the Alliance of Downtown Civic Organization, or ADCO. 9 other organizations have all voted to sign a letter and send it to the mayor, the city council, and the governor's office to say we really don't think that it's a good idea to reauthorize an implementation plan, an urban renewal zone, prior to having the long-term plan that is supposed to be Imagine Boston 2030 completed. If they want to fool around with some sort of bridge so that we can get to, so that projects don't fall apart between now and then, we're open. The other neighborhood associations, we are open, in theory, to having such a bridge in place. But we want to make very sure that the voice is being heard of the neighborhood associations. I want to make sure everyone here understands that there is a serious linkage between individual projects and this overall context in which the VRA operates. So we've reserved about 15 minutes of discussion for follow-up on the urban renewal zone letter. And that's going to include doing what many other associations are doing, which is not only signing the ADCO letter, but also writing a separate letter just from our organization to the same entities, the City Council, the Mayor, the Governor's Office, to say that we really don't see any need to have this particular zone renewed. And I want to start that having a discussion about that, because we're starting to form the letter. And obviously we want to do that with the advice and consent of this group and have everyone's input in that letter. But Bay Village and South End and Fenway have all written such letters. The Midtown Cultural District Residents Association is contemplating a letter, and I think we should contemplate such a letter too. So we'll be talking about that. So with that, I'm going to end my president's report. I guess traditionally, I usually say this right up front, but we are being videotaped by Matt Conti. It almost goes without saying, because that's just what happens in the North End. But I want to make sure that everyone knows that. Also, I want to ask any city employees, if we have the mayor or city councilors or their representatives or any other folks who are city or state, please identify yourself.
Hi everybody, I'm Maria from Senator Petroselli's office. I have no updates or anything, but feel free to, let them know if you need anything.
Thanks for the support. We also have, from Julie Burrows' office, I'll let you introduce yourself because I'm going to mispronounce your name.
Hello everyone, thank you so much for having me here and just making a little bit of space in your agenda. My name is Carol. I am here on behalf of the Office of Arts and Culture at City Hall. I'm actually here because I've been working all summer long on this really amazing project that's called Boston Creates. Boston Creates is a plan that the mayor started. He said, why not start a 10-year plan to basically reform the arts and culture in the city of Boston. So we have noticed that the North End we haven't really heard that much from the North End. And the reason why I'm here is because I'm collecting surveys to hear the North End voice and to get their input on this plan that the mayor is starting.
We like to talk more than thought, sure.
Yes, so I understand that. If you have any questions about it, definitely, I'm not an expert. I mean, I have been working on it during the summer, but I can tell you a little bit more about what we have been doing. But right now, the best help that you can give me is if you fill out the survey that I have here. So for those people who are interested in filling out the survey, you can raise your hand and I can pass out the survey. I know some of you, I kind of sneaked in and I said, hey, I have this survey. And you said, yeah, sure, I'll help you with it. So I don't know if anybody raise your hand, I'll pass out the surveys and that'll be a great help. Thank you so much. Yeah.
It's also available online.
And it's also available online, yeah.
And I think it's great. I mean, I looked at the statistics, and the response rates for other neighborhoods are much better than ours. So let's let our voices be heard and be part of this cultural plan. So much planning going on. Cultural planning is great. While that's being distributed, let me ask Mary if you have an update for us.
My only update is if anybody has come in and hasn't checked in.
Yes,
I'm trying. We continue to get new members. We continue to welcome them. So everybody have all of them.
Thanks, Mary. going to ask Robin, has a longer than usual Parks and Open Spaces report because there's a lot going on. So, please.
Hi, everyone. First of all, I have a number of parks to talk about tonight. I'm going to talk about Christopher Columbus Park first. And Columbus Day is coming up Monday, and we have a lot of events planned in that park, starting with a parade at 11:45. Anyone can join in. It's primarily for children and young kids, but it's a lot of fun. There's going to be a lot of activities and storytelling and bubbles and the tide pool from the New England Aquarium. They will have animals to touch. And NEMPAC is providing some entertainment. It's really a wonderful day, so please come out and join your neighbors and having some fun in Christopher Columbus Park on Monday. And also the Friends of Christopher Columbus Park, who take care of that beautiful park and fund the trellis lights and the roses and take care of all the gardening there and put on these events. They're having their annual gala in November, on November 6th. It's going to be at the Boston Harbor Hotel, starting at 6:30 p.m. If you would like to come, we would love to have you there. It really supports a fantastic neighborhood cause. All the money goes back into the park. That money is spent very wisely on mulch and flowers and lights. It really does go back in. And it's a great night at the Boston Harbor Hotel. So please, if you want to buy tickets or learn more about the Columbus Day events, please see the website, which is foccp.org. That's one park. The other park, the Greenway, has also had a lot going on it lately. On Monday, we had a ribbon cutting for the new plants in the boxwood beds in the North End parks. I hope everyone's gotten to see what an incredible improvement the new plantings have been and the new containers. They really add a sophistication and a great twist to the park. It looks beautiful, and it's changed the way I walk through that parcel. So please go and see them. The flowers are still blooming there, and they've done a lot of work in that. And if you haven't seen the swings, please come out and see the swings on the pergola. Thank you. I should know that. The pergola. They're really a lot of fun. I think it lowers my blood pressure just sitting on the swings. It's great. Please come and enjoy them. They're really wonderful.
You can get them going really fast.
Not recommended.
No, it is not recommended. That was a joint effort with the Mass Cultural Council. The Greenway wrote a grant, and we did receive the grant of $200,000 for that. And then the Greenway raised money for that as well, so through their various fundraising efforts. So
No tax dollars, right?
no tax dollars were used. And the new mural is up in Dewey Square. I know that's not one of the North End parks, but it is provocative. Check it out. You should. I am an artist, and I truly support your input on this survey. And another way to dialogue about arts in the neighborhood is to see this mural. So check it out. Rachel Revere Park, yet another park. There's another community meeting for the improvements to Rachel Revere Park. That's going to be on next Wednesday, October 14th at 6:30 p.m. at St. John's School. We just recently had a meeting with the Parks Department on North Square. So if you've been to that meeting, it would be great to come to the Rachel Revere meeting because they're so intertwined. It's nice to see the continuity of the changes that they're making there. So please come to that meeting. There's a lot of information, and they really, truly are looking for your input. So if you come to that would be great. And an update on the Parks and Open Spaces Committee. We did receive a response to our letter to the Parks Department that we sent out a number of months ago to Chris Book, the Commissioner of the Parks Department. we had,
Regarding the Prado.
regarding the Paul Revere Mall, yes, Prado. We had sent a needs assessment list to the Parks Department, pointing out all the areas where we really think the park needs immediate attention. And they did respond, and they said that they appreciated our letter, they agree with everything that we put in the letter, and they have started some initial improvements. They've installed new trash barrels, they've painted the entrance chains, they've done some minor pathway repairs, probably the most immediate ones, and they've been cleaning the walls. So they have started on this, and they said the fall improvements will continue. They're going to remove some of the moss that's growing. They're going to clean the brick pathway joints, which sounds like a big deal. They're going to replace some of the old signs, and they're consulting with an arborist and soil specialist to assess the health of the existing trees, which is really important. And they're going to enlist a conservator for the assessment of the statue and the plaques. So it really is a full assessment of the needs of the park, and it was great to hear back from the Parks Department. So they anticipate the needs assessment will be finished in the fall, and they'll have a rough estimate for the capital improvements fund. And once the funding is secure, they will get back to us. So I will keep you abreast of any news from them. But it was really great to get a formal response from them. I heard from Allison Perlman, who's one of the project managers for that. So, and I also want to remind you, we do have a Parks and Open Spaces Committee. If you'd like to join that, please let me know, and I'll let you know when we meet. We can use every once in a while.
Or, do you mind if I make a quick plug?
Please.
Speaking of parks and open space, I forgot to make a very important plug, which is that tomorrow night, the North End Columbus Day Committee is honoring the Friends of Christopher Columbus for all their hard work, and it's a banquet tomorrow night at the living room. It's $45 at the door, so if you're interested, please stop by. If you have any questions, of course, let me know. And of course, kind of keeping with the Columbus Day idea, that kind of connects to, we do have the parade taking place this Sunday at 1 p.m. So, but again, we're honoring the Friends of Christopher Columbus for all the hard work and all the things that they've done. Please come out and help us.
Can I ask you a question about the parade on Sunday? Well, you can go on, I can ask you afterwards.
Yeah, you can ask me after.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we have another parks announcement from, by way of David and from.
As thorough and detailed as Robin's report is, she omitted the fact that on Saturday, this Saturday, October 10th, from 11:30 to 2, over the Deep Whipple Playground on the Gassie's Flights, the North End Dog Group, otherwise known as RUF, is holding its annual once-a-year fundraiser, and the funds from this event will be used to help convert the flights to a permanent dog park, which we're hoping to be able to open sometime early spring of next year. You don't have to be a dog or a dog owner to attend the event. We're going to have lots of wonderful raffle prizes available, things like gift certificates for local restaurants, gift baskets from local establishments. I think the neighbor, North End Garage, Pilgrim Parking, is donating a couple months of free parking as a raffle item. So lots of stuff going on, and there will be a very entertaining dog show taking place through the course of the day. So even if you can't stay for the whole time, please stop by and say hello and help support the dog park. Thank you.
I didn't forget, I just didn't understand.
Oh, I see.
I see, I knew that. I did want to say something about parks in general, and Chris Cook is one of my favorite commissioners in the city of Boston. He's come and he's spoken to us. He looks forward to speaking to us again. But one of the realities of his job is that there's a lot of parkland and not a whole lot of money. So he sometimes will say, he loves all parks, but if you bring your own money, you can get more done, which is sort of the way of the world. The Friends of Christopher Columbus Park, I just want you to know that, to what Maria said and what Robin said, if a tree blows down in a storm, the city doesn't take care of it, the Friends Group does. the lighting on the trellis, and this trimming of the wisteria on the trellis, all taken care of by the Friends Group. The plantings in several of the areas are exclusively funded by the Friends Group. So we're really doing a lot in the park. We're not doing everything, we're not mowing the lawn, but we have to raise, the Friends Group has to raise a lot of money, and it is a good cause. And we also, in the North End, need to start thinking of ways to use that same kind of energy that has found itself in Christopher Columbus Park, bring it to the Prado and start raising money for that, because that is such a historic, important place. It's such an embarrassment, the condition it's in. When tourists walk through on a rainy day and there are all these big puddles and people are tripping, my heart falls. And we can do better than that. We will do better than that. This assessment that's going on is the beginning of that process. And I'm excited that we're in that process. So with that, let me turn it over to Victor Bologna.
Can I ask,
Yeah.
something? On this little park, dog park, do they have a videotape to get pictures of vandalism? Like last week, in our little park on Richmond Street, somebody went in there and broke all the tools and pieces and...
There isn't right now, but if you talk to me after the meeting, I can tell you what we're doing in that space. I'm trying to help curtail vandalism.
Because I know in my country they have a videotape in the very remote little towns, and they know everything what happens in So a country like the United States, you should have, they know
Well, we have a friend from Singapore staying with us, and she's offering suggestions as to what we can do to keep the civil order. I'm politely listening. So yeah, and Chris Cook is also aware that there is vandalism in other parks, like for Columbus statues, sometimes it's ill-treated by people, and there are measures in place to make sure that such things happen.
Because they send a lot of police to ticket the car park. And I say, instead to send the police to ticket the car park, they should send the police to pick up on these people and really punish them so they won't come and do their
Well, that's good input, and pass that along to Chris, but I think you'll be pleased that they're doing some stuff along those lines. I will pass it to Victor for our ZLC report, and you have as much time as you need. Oh, really? Yes, you do. Just hospital big mistake. I'm in a generous mood.
2.5 minutes.
Maybe take 5, Victor.
No.
Well, first I'd like to say, what is ZLC? Because we have new members whom I will welcome and tell you what ZLC is. ZLC is zoning, licensing, and construction. What does it do? It deals with proponents of zoning changes and proponents of changes to or initiation of liquor licensing. It's a meeting that we have once a month on the fourth Tuesday of the month. Not a formal meeting like this, where most are taken. An informal meeting sitting around the table, the purpose of which is so that the proponent who wants to do something and the neighbors and abutters who are impacted have a chance to chat before it comes to this meeting for a vote. It reminded me, since I have some time, as I was preparing my thoughts, I thought of the word GAM. Does anybody know what GAM means? Ah, you must be from New Bedford. Oh,
I worked on that topic for a while.
Oh, okay. It's when the whaling ships left New Bedford for 2 years, sometimes longer, wouldn't see their friends, wouldn't get into until perhaps in some exotic port. In the South Seas, there happened to be 2 New Bedford whaling ships together, and they would get together and GAM. So this is what happens at a ZLC meeting. We sit around the table, a proponent proposes, neighbors and abutters say, well, we think it's just that way. We think it works, we think it's helpful, and there is also a system that we have that was voted by members, it was 4 years ago, something like that, where if at that meeting it appears that there are no impacts on the neighborhood, no impacts on abutters, and that the proper neighborhood notification is made by the proponent, that the executive committee that meets 2 days later can vote to send a no opposition letter. So that's the CLC system, and welcome to it. What has happened? Our past CLC meeting was on September 22nd, and we had 3 items on the agenda, 2 of which Ford has mentioned. One was on Michelangelo Street, where the proponent who owned a duplex condominium unit wanted to extend into the basement. It is on this agenda for a vote, but we are not voting because the Board of Appeal allowed it 2 days ago. The same thing happened with the Pache item, which was on the agenda. That is the Pache, where there was a Salumi, how do you say in English? Grocery store. And they plan to tear down most of the building and convert it to a parking lot. This would have been before you for information and vote, but the Board of Appeal allowed that before we get it on here.
Before even the ZLC.
Yes, that's right. And the third item that was on the CLC agenda last month was Theo's Cozy Corner Restaurant had applied to the licensing board for a liquor license, and the licensing board lost the application. So that's why it's not on today's NEWRA agenda for a vote. What else? 88 Prince Street was heard at the September 22 CLC meeting, and that was to change the zoning from commercial to residential of a commercial unit that's been vacant for some time and has been used as a residence for some time on the first floor at 88 Prince Street. It turns out that a new owner had purchased, and when he applied for a residential exemption, we were told the ISD said, you can't live there, it's commercial, and threatened criminal prosecution for occupying a commercial space as a residence. Anyway, the executive committee voted to send a no objection letter, so that is an example of, I don't want to say a shortcut, but an efficient, streamlined type of procedure.
But the particular person at the ZLC meeting had, without employing a lawyer, at least in this phase, he had a bad experience with someone he'd worked with before. But he went and did notifications, copious notifications. He brought abutters with him. It was just a tour de force. It was great.
Yeah,
it's good to see how and he's a fireman. I mean, he just he just figured out how to do all this stuff. I had a couple of phone calls with him, and then he came and brought all this stuff. That's great, and he just did a great job, and there was no one who seemed to be opposed to it. It just seemed, and it's, and he was very, very nervous, and I told him, unfortunately, we probably have 3 times a year the same thing happen, where some property is sold, and someone discovers, oh, that space that a restaurant's been operating in for 20 years was never zoned for a restaurant. Oh, so we have to make a post facto change. And we make those, but it does show that if we take more care, and this is to the city, if you take more care in the process and keeping records, we can make sure that we don't ever have these situations, because they are very disruptive to the poor people who are residents and stuck in situations like that.
Okay, and what's coming up at the CLC meeting of September 22? Well, I assume, or I hope, that 162 Salem Street, Theo's Cozy Corner, I hope the licensing board has found the application. Well, as a matter of fact, I think they have had to file another application. So if they do give their neighbor notification, that will be on the agenda. And the other item, which will definitely be on the agenda, is 536 Commercial Street. And without prejudging, I should at least say that this was controversial 3 years ago, maybe, where this is a building that had been purchased and at great expense converted to a single family facing what part is it facing? Well, it's near
The bocce courts.
The bocce courts, Jason, the bocce courts. Okay. And a budding building objected to what they planned to do on the roof, which was build a roof deck, because the plans showed where the roof deck looked straight into the living room of someone who had lived in that unit for 25 years or something like that, and didn't want parking directly next to his living room. Well, the 536, it has a new owner now, and the new owner would like, back up a step. There was a compromise that between the abutters and that owner, which was to build a smaller roof deck away from the living room window. Well, the new owner has purchased and wants to enlarge the roof deck. So that will be on the ZLC agenda on the 22nd of September, on the October, whatever it is, October 27th, and will most likely be on the agenda. Since our annual meeting a year ago, we have written 15 letters to the two boards. 8 were recording votes of support or non-opposition. 2 were votes to oppose. 4 were letters from the executive committee or recording the no objection position taken by the executive committee, and 1 was a split vote, opposed and not opposed. Total 15. That is the ZLC report.
I have one question, and if anyone else has questions, we'll take them because we have a little extra time. There is a project suspected at the old gas station converted to lavanderia across from the Lewis Wharf building. There was an environmental department walkthrough scheduled for that, suggesting that there's actually a project going on, because why would you do a walkthrough if there's no project? I called Maria Lanza, and the Office of Neighborhood Services has no record of any filing of plans or applications of any sort. So I'm mystified as to why we're having some state activity for a project. And my only theory is that the urban renewal zone follows Commercial Street, so it veers up toward Bill 8C and up Commercial Street, and that's on the other side. Could the BRA be doing that?
Yes, I imagine the BRA could be.
We should look into that. It's just, it's again, this oddity of the system that Boston has vestige from the 50s, that we do one thing in one place and another thing in another place, depending on whether you're in a BRA zone or not, and it's sort of silly. But, you know, makes for an interesting ZLC. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I might point out one thing that for people who do not know, our recommendations, our votes don't often matter two hoots at the zoning and the Board of Appeals. I don't know if they always follow what we vote on.
They don't always follow what we vote on. Would you like to address that one for us?
Well, they're not supposed to follow. They're supposed to take under advisement our recommendations and then make their own independent decisions.
Yeah, when you go to the ZBA meeting, and anyone who has gone to one, you can see the process. You'll have Office of Neighborhood Services come with their decision to support or not support. That's supposed to be guided by our vote, by the Nunic vote, and by their own subjective assessment of their abutters meetings. And so they put all that together and make a recommendation. Then city councilor representatives, the district councilor, Sal, and the 4 at-large councilors can also choose to support a project. We have some projects that are always supported by at-large city councilors that I have never once seen visit the North End. And I will point out there's a city councilor election coming up this year, and I think everyone should take note of who comes to the North End and who doesn't, because you want to make sure we're represented. You know, if we vote, and there have been some instances where we and Nunic both have voted on something, and the ONS has reversed it and said, well, you know, we sort of subjectively feel it should go the other way, and they use as an excuse, well, you know, city councilor such and such is also supporting it. And we're thinking, why? And did city councilor such and such ever even go to the property? So I just think, you know, it's a democratic process for city councilors. We can vote them out if we don't like them. We should take note of that. It's a good observation. I will say, though, sometimes, like on Quincy Court, we'll take a vote, you know, even after going through a very lengthy and thorough ZLC process where we had actually 2 ZLC meetings and a bunch of special meetings to try to come up with a compromise. They came very close, but ultimately the developer wanted to build something the abutters didn't want. The abutters members here, you know, made their case. We voted overwhelmingly to oppose the project, and Newnick voted to support. And we, you know, our view prevailed in the ZBA meeting. So, you know, it depends the circumstances, what kind of support you have. You know, but it's you know, there are probably 3 or 4 instances of that where I thought the ZBA was going to go one way because I hear you're expressing a rightfully jaded point of view that doesn't the BRA or doesn't the ZBA always vote for those extra stories, and do they give a hoot about the floor area ratio, which is supposed to be an important density measurement that we're trying to keep down? And for the last 5 years, the trend was they were disregarding a lot of input. But I think this year they're starting to listen again, and that's to our credit, and we need to keep that going.
I'd just like to add one thing to that, and that is that even if the ZBA does not honor our position, the fact is that sometimes the abutters will appeal. And if they do appeal, it is helpful to them that the neighborhood association supported their position. And in reality, if the neighborhood association did not support them, it's used against them. So I think that that's another important consideration.
Public safety, David Marks, please.
I have one question for Victor, if we have time.
Yeah.
Okay, a quick one.
Need time for cookies.
I'll make it brief.
I'll take a cookie away from you.
This is an issue, I believe, an issue that was raised, I believe, at Newnick's monthly meeting this earlier in the week, and it pertains to a 44 Prince Street. I don't know how familiar you are with that, but apparently, for those of you who don't know, 44 Prince is the building, the condo building next to the library that straddles Parmenter and Prince. Right, it abuts the Salem Street restaurants, and they've come before NEWRA looking for neighborhood support in the past with issues pertaining to the development expansion of restaurants on Salem Street. And apparently, sometime earlier in the year, they've been locking the access gate that's supposed to be a public passageway through from Parmenter to Prince. And I'm told it was done for security concerns, that there had been some unsavory activity of some sort during the daytime, which strikes me as odd because, as far as I know, there are cameras and a doorman that works there during the day that would certainly be able to report any problems to the police. So I don't know if you're familiar enough to know what the agreement was that was made with 44 Prince when they wanted to develop that property as to what sort of access they were going to provide or not.
I remember a promise made by the developer, which was incorporated into the plans by the architect, that there would be a passageway through to preserve the ability to pass through, which preceded the development. Whether it was recorded in the registry of deeds and is enforceable, my understanding is the problem is that the person who wants it locked has a majority of the votes on the Board of Trustees. And it would be the Board of Trustees to enforce or not enforce the capacity of the public. But I'll stop there.
Well, even if it's not legally enforceable, perhaps NEWRA can craft a letter representing the sentiment of the neighborhood and reminding them of their past promises.
That's a good idea, because I was on the AAG at that time when they were doing that. And that was a promise to the neighborhood, that they would keep that path open for the neighborhood to go through as a walkway. And that we did not agree, but people understood their concern closing it at night for people going through.
Sure, that's
That's
understandable.
understandable, and no one complained about that. But then all of a sudden, someone decided that they wanted to close it. And I've seen people, but no one wants to speak up, but I've seen people walking with their shopping bags,
Right.
coming in like they're in a state of shock,
Yeah.
you know, and they only live on the other side of Prince Street.
That's right.
And they're older people, and they have to walk all
Yeah.
around. So I'm glad that somebody is taking initiative to do this,
Right.
to try to find out what the story is. So I've called and tried to find out if it's written somewhere, but I do remember, and I do recall that that was part of the commitment. And there was other mitigations that they gave to the neighborhood
That's right.
before building this project.
Okay, we're going to go around. Stephanie next.
Thank you. Stephanie Hogue, Henchman Street. I just want to add to what Victor and Sandra have said, because I'm somewhat familiar with that, and I also with some of the support we've given them over the years. But I want to add, and this is a point for everybody to keep in mind the next time we have developers coming to us, this is not the only mitigation that the neighborhood received that then in later years was lost. So I think to what Victor's point was that things need to be recorded. I think in the future, if this type of thing is offered, there needs to be an easement on the property so that we don't have to deal with this kind of thing again.
I agree with her statement, but the other part of it is, what about the fire department? They have both ends locked, and those buildings, granted the 44 is a new building, but all those buildings that back onto it from Hanover Street, Prince, and Palmetto Street, if there was a fire back there, the firemen can't get at it because the doors are locked. And I think that if someone should approach the fire inspectors and have someone take a look at that, because that should be open. I mean, that was always open, even when the CC Center was there, we could always walk through.
Okay, I'll dig up what documents I had.
That'd be great.
Thank you, Victor.
Great, thank you for bringing it up. Fantastic. So, this time for sure, public safety report, David Mark.
Everyone, David Mark, Public Safety Commissioner. Just want to give you a brief report. By the way, my public safety reports are now directly published on Matt Conti's wonderful neighborhood website, www.northandworkfront.com. Thank you, Matt. Part 1 crime citywide is down 11% from about a year ago this time. Within District A1, which includes the North End and several other downtown neighborhoods and areas, Part 1 crime is down 21%. So it's obviously very, very good. In the last 30-day period, from roughly the beginning of September up to right around last Thursday, October 1st, public safety meeting, there was one breaking and entering incident that occurred on September 28th at 14 Unity Street, apartment number 5, between general business hours of 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. A front door was forced open, the door lock was broken, missing items from the unit included an Apple MacBook and pearls. There was one auto theft within that 30-day period that took place on September 16th. A 2011 Honda CRV was stolen from Clark Street. Some of you may, or all of you may recall, for that matter, got a lot of local news attention. The drug-related incident that happened at 77 Endicott Street, where I believe a bunch of suspects burst into an apartment, and I believe they knew the victim was a targeted crime. They found marijuana on the premises, and one of the suspects accidentally had shot himself in the foot. So this is what I'm referencing right now. 4 suspects in that incident have been identified and arrested, including the suspect who accidentally shot himself in the foot. One other suspect is still being sought. The suspects, or at least one of them, from somewhere. There were 10 larcenies and 4 larcenies from a motor vehicle within that same 30-day period. Several of these larcenies involved package thefts. That is something that unfortunately does happen in a neighborhood such as the North End, but not just the North End, as far as downtown neighborhoods are concerned. For lots of various reasons, which I'm sure we could all think of in 5 seconds or less. Easy access to buildings, people buzzing apartment units to get in, and maybe the person on the other end of the intercom is just buzzing them in, not even trying to find out who it is. Who wants to get into a building? In theory, at least, anything could really happen. Now, in regards to all these different types of larcenies, there is a suspect that is believed to be responsible for at least 1 package theft, and possibly, at least 1 larceny from a motor vehicle. That suspect has been identified, complaints are being sought, and the suspect will be charged, at least for now, with one package theft crime. Almost done. September 20th, there was a larceny outside or in front of a business at 28 Prince Street. This is a third incident that's unfortunately happened at this place of business. There were 12 dresses on a sidewalk rack right on Prince Street in front of the business. They were stolen. I did ask Captain Fong at last Thursday's public safety meeting, per a resident inquiry to me, if video from the front or the sidewalk facing video camera affixed to that building could be obtained as part of the investigation, and the captain said that detectives are working on obtaining that video. There was also one arrest. Don't really have any details about it other than the fact that it was warrant related. Two other things real quick and then I'll move on. Unfortunately, one thing that happens in this neighborhood from time to time is it's happening a lot more and more in the city these days. Lots of neighborhoods, needles that are being found, especially in public parks. You may have read on Matt's NorthEndWaterfront.com website, I think yesterday, sadly a North End resident was pricked by a needle. And of all circumstances, while they were kindly volunteering their time in the park, helping to clean up. So once again, this is not the first time, and I'm sure it won't be the last time, Mary Wright, an RN, who's also a health educator at North End Waterfront Health on Hanover Street, she once again, because they always directly post to Matt's neighborhood website, she once again shared needle awareness safety tips and the steps that you should take if you see a needle, or get stuck by one. What to do if you find a dirty needle. I know this sounds like common sense, but please bear with me. Stop, do not go further into the park. Don't touch the needle. Obviously, if it's a child, tell an adult. Call 311. And if you are accidentally stuck by a dirty needle, wash the area where you were stuck and seek, of course, immediate medical attention. Last but not least, I did attend the Lewis Wharf proposed project meeting last night, and of course lots of different things were discussed, including public safety concerns. I know that they are in the midst of a more detailed traffic study as far as performing traffic studies. And so from a public safety point of view, I'm certainly interested on what that study or those studies will result in. So anything that I can find out, I will certainly pass along your way. Once again, last but not least, public safety meetings are always, unless otherwise noted, first Thursday of the month in this room at 6 o'clock. Thank you very much.
Thanks. And on the back of your agenda, of course, are all the comments and their locations. One question for you, David, on the public safety meeting. I asked last time, because there's more awareness of the gang activity in East Boston, particularly the MS-13 gang, if we could keep sort of a pulse on that and get Captain Fong and others to talk about what's going on in East Boston and why it's not going to come here to the North End. Did you have him talk at all about that in the meeting?
I did ask, he didn't talk about it at the meeting, but he assures me, I actually talked about it on the phone and ran it by him very briefly right around the time of the meeting last week. He does not have any concerns about such activity of any type infiltrating the program. So we didn't talk about it.
So don't worry, be happy.
Don't worry.
Well, okay. I trust Captain Fong's judgment, and he, I do think violent crime, type 1 crime has gone down by 11%. Most cities it's going up. I mean, you look at the stats in New York and Chicago, and it's gone up 40–50%. Murder rates in Austin, Texas are up 80%. I mean, it's crazy what's going on throughout the country, and we're very lucky in Boston. However, there are pockets, like the gang activity in East Boston, which are worrisome. And if they spread, they're going to reverse the statistics. So that's the reason that I'm concerned that we just keep an eye on that stuff. And we make sure that we're doing everything we can to help turn back the gangs, make sure they don't catch hold. MS-13 is relatively new here, but they're a West Coast gang, and they also operate in some southern cities. Drug trafficking gang, El Salvadorian gang. It's a dangerous gang. And I just think that we need to be vigilant.
If any changes, I'll certainly spread the word, but like I said, he doesn't have any concerns.
Okay, well, keep on. Thank you. Thank you.